This is Right on the Money with Tom Mosley, founder of Mosley Wealth Management.
Our mission at Mosley Wealth Management is to help people make sure they never run out of income the rest of their life and they pay as little as they're legally required to pay in taxes.
Since 1995, Tom Mosley and his team have been creating comprehensive, custom financial plans to help you preserve what you've earned and pursue what you've envisioned.
In retirement, a lot of people have built a great lump sum. We call that your lumber yard. But you need a blueprint to put that lumber yard into a plan that you can build a retirement house to live in.
What's on your mind this week, Southern California? The stock market, taxes, inflation, income, Social Security, how to ease into the life of your dreams? Let's discover conservative financial strategies starting right now. This is your Right on the Money Radio Hour with Tom Mosley.
And a very happy weekend to you. You are listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the CEO and president of Mosley Wealth Management based right here in Southern California. And I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. Each week, Tom and I are committed to bringing you retirement planning solutions so that you can live the retirement of your dreams. We are currently working through a series all about taxes. And I think it's just important to remind our listeners, Tom, about your expertise in this area, why you're so passionate about it. Of course, you're not a CPA and you're not an accountant, but you are a financial planner who engages in strategic tax planning. So if you're new to us, we're excited that you're here. And Tom, why don't you just help our viewers understand a little bit about your background and why this is such an important subject for their retirement?
Well, thanks for listening. If you're out there and saying, well, why is a financial planner talking to me about taxes? I love my CPA. He's a great guy. We served on a ministry team together for several years, and he moved to Nashville, and he's still doing my taxes and everything. He's a great guy, but he's always looking back. He's always looking on what taxes were last year and trying to make sure that I pay as little as I need to pay, prepping me for what I've got to pay for this year. And I love that, but what we do as financial planners and what your financial planner should be doing is should be looking down the road and looking out the front windshield of life rather than just always in the rear view mirror, looking at what you had to pay for last year, which a lot of you are concerned about right now. Okay, rightfully so. But if you get a long-term out the front windshield view of your taxes down through the years, I think it's very important that you have that. And most CPAs don't do that.
No,
Most,
yeah.
and brokers that are at a big box firm don't do that. They just don't do it. Now, I go to what a guy who's been called America's authority on IRAs and 401ks and taxation. He's a New York CPA tax attorney, and his name is 𝗪𝗪𝗁. You might see him on public television sometimes doing specials because he knows what he's talking about. And I train with him 4 boring days a year because what we do is he puts it into shoe leather. You go through about each 2-day session. There's a 2-day session in the spring and a 2-day session in the fall. And I just want you guys to know I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn, so I think I know everything about taxes. But I have gotten to a status of master elite advisor with him, which means I've been with him about 6 or 7 years, doing 4 days a year of all the tax changes, the tax laws, the IRS rulings, so that, yeah, you can put X amount of dollars into an IRA each year. Everybody's got that X amount into a 401k or a 403b. But what if you've got that herd of elephants going east on the Sahara Desert on Thursday? How does that get taxed? In other words, the real special things. And that's what Ed teaches us to do, and that's the expertise that we bring to the table at Mosley Wealth Management.
Well, I know one of the pillars of what you and your team of all-star advisors do for people is help make sure that they're not paying any more to the IRS than they are legally required to pay. We always say on the show, there's a time to pay taxes and there's a time to legally avoid them. And we want you to pay less to the IRS. We shouldn't have to be paying any more than what we're legally required to do, right?
Exactly. I got into this industry if you're out there and you're wondering, well, where'd you come from? What did you do? I got into this industry after serving almost 2 decades in the ministry. And in the ministry, I had run into people who were standing across my desk when I was in charge of benevolence at the churches where I served. And they were trying to decide to buy food or buy medicine because they were out of money in retirement. So when I got into the industry on June the 8th, 1995, almost 29 years ago, and they asked me who I wanted to work with, I said, I want to work with retirees to make sure they never run out of money. And you would have thought I had said some kind of foreign offensive language because they looked at me like I was crazy.
Right. And what they were probably expecting you to say is, I want to work with doctors, or I want to work with lawyers, or that kind of thing, right?
Exactly. People with money. And I said, I want to work to make sure people don't run out of money. And quickly after 1995, when I got in, I realized that the biggest thing that was taking money out of the pocket of people who were in retirement was their taxes.
Wow.
Because they just hadn't properly planned it. And I began to find out some of the, not tricks, but some of the rules and laws. And there's a lot of gotchas in the U.S. tax system where, you do something that you think is right, that a normal, sensible person would think is right. But remember, Congress put this together. So we're not talking about normal, sensible people in most cases. And there are a lot of gotchas, and you go down a rabbit hole over here to try to do something you think it's great until March or April of the following year, and you realize you did something that was out of bounds. So I then said, I not only want to make sure people don't run out of money for the rest of their life, but they pay as little as they're legally required to pay in taxes. And I think that's very important.
For your own no-cost retirement blueprint, call Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
It is absolutely important. And I think, to your point, Tom, one of the most frustrating things, and this is why we're spending so much time talking about tax planning, is back when things like the 401k and the IRA were invented, we were told that this was a really good thing for us, that if we put money in, we would receive a tax deduction, the tax would be deferred, and we wouldn't have to pay that tax until we reached retirement, when supposedly we would be in a lower tax bracket. But that's not actually happening for a lot of folks today. Am I right?
That is exactly right. But if you shake a sign in somebody that says, this is the way to not pay any taxes this year on a certain amount of money, everybody's going to run to it. I mean, it's a natural attraction. And when they passed the laws in 1978, they started the 401ks. I want to say most people had pensions, but historically, almost half the people had a pension at that time. And that was the retirement, your Social Security, what you'd saved, and your pension. That was the way it was retired. People would retire back then. And then they started the 401k and the IRAs. And a lot of people, for almost a whole generation, they had a pension and a 401k or an IRA. So, a 401k, let's put the pre-tax dollars in it. You contribute to it. You get to deduct that from your taxes. You don't pay any tax. Great, man. I'm so happy. I'm not paying any tax now. And to your point, Kristen, a lot of you were told out there that, you put the money in the 401k and you'll be in a lower tax bracket whenever you retire. It was huge. I mean, the reality is, though, most people spend just as much money in retirement, and most people are just about in the same tax bracket when they retire that they were when they were working. So it's a real trick that was told to us.
Yes. And the majority of Americans have the bulk of their wealth saved up now in these types of tax deferred accounts. So we're going to be talking about some solutions today of how to navigate that so that you can pay the least amount of tax that you're legally required to pay. And of course, that means that we need to talk about a strategy known as Roth Conversions.
Roth conversions, that is a way, there's different laws that came into effect at different times. And the Roth, a lot of people come into the office, a lot of you sign up for appointments and you come in and you meet with one of our 6 all-star advisors. We've got 5 offices out there, and you come in and one of the real common things I hear you say is well, I wish I had known about a Roth and I had started in a Roth way back 40 years ago. Well, I got great news for you. 40 years ago, there was no such thing as a Roth, except a man who would eventually be elected as a senator. And in 1998, only 25, 26 years ago, they passed a law that started a Roth IRA. And they also made a provision for a Roth 401k. Now, what was the difference? A regular 401k, you avoid paying tax on all the money that goes in there. And so that money is not taxed when it goes into a regular 401k. It grows without tax, but when you get to retirement and you start to take the money out, you begin to take money out, and every penny that you take out of a regular 401k or a regular IRA, every single penny is taxed at regular income. Therefore, a lot of ripple effects there. It sometimes ripples you into a higher tax bracket because you might have money coming from pensions, you might have money coming from other sources, and then boom, all of a sudden it pushes you because you have to start taking that money out at age 73 now. You have to start taking what's called required minimum distributions. We talked about that last week. And so when you have to take that out, it pushes you into a higher tax bracket. Secondly, it could also push you into a higher bracket where you have to pay more for Part B and Part D for your monthly Medicare charges, And it also could ripple you into a higher tax bracket so that you have to pay more on capital gains, where you have to pay, instead of 15% or 0%, it might push you to where you have to pay 15%. And from 15%, it could sometimes push people to 20%. Now, a lot of you are saying, well, boy, I didn't know all of these things. Right, because most advisors are not talking about these things, and they're not talking for sure about Roth conversions. We do talk about Roth conversions. When we come back from break, we're going to dive into Roth conversions. But here's what I would say to you. Is your advisor talking to you about a long-term retirement tax strategy to lower what you're going to have to pay throughout the years of retirement, through the windshield of retirement, rather than just looking back at what you had to pay last year? Your advisor could be your financial advisor that's fumbling that ball, or your CPA. If they're not, you need to call us.
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you. And that number to call is 888-930-5609. And what will happen is you'll be able to schedule a time and come in to receive your very own complimentary retirement blueprint from Tom and the team at Mosley Wealth Management. And as part of that, you'll receive a tax report so that you can start this strategic tax planning for yourself as well. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we have a lot more to cover on today's episode. We'll be back right after this. Are you worried about taxes eating into your retirement savings? By engaging in savvy tax planning, you might be able to create greater tax efficiency in your retirement plan. At Mosley Wealth Management, our team of retirement planning specialists can help you explore tax-deferred and tax-free investment options, as well as strategies to help potentially minimize your tax burden in retirement. Don't let taxes derail your retirement plans. Let us help you create a tax-efficient financial plan and work towards maximizing your savings and minimizing your taxes. Call Tom Mosley of Right on the Money and Mosley Wealth Management today to learn more about our tax planning solutions. Call 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and today we are continuing this important series on taxes, making sure that you are prepared to pay the least amount of tax that you are legally required to pay. And Tom, we mentioned in the first segment, we were talking about how back when things like 401ks and IRAs first came onto the scene, we were sold this idea that this was really, really good for us because supposedly we would be deferring all the tax. And when we got to retirement, we would be in a lower tax bracket. But we've been talking today about how that isn't always the case. For a lot of folks, they're getting a big surprise in retirement. And this is why this is such an important subject to tackle. I know you have a wealth of stories of different folks that you've navigated through this tax planning with. And you shared a story with me that I would love for our viewers to hear as well, because I think it really hits home this point.
Well, no fear out there. I never tell any names, but probably about 15 years ago, I was working with one of my clients, and she was a lady that had several daycare centers when she was younger, and she was in retirement. And she said, this was a big trick. I said, well, what was a big trick? And she said, well, this idea of putting all the money into a 401k and an IRA, and my taxes would be lower when I retire. She said, when I was younger, I had 5 kids and a mortgage on the house and all kind of deductions, and I paid very little in tax. And she said, now I have all of this money I've got to take out of my 401k that I don't need, and I don't have a deduction for my house, and I don't have a deduction for my kids. And she said, now I'm paying far more tax than I've ever paid in my life. So in some ways it was a big trick, and so it really throws a curveball.
It does. And I think, success in retirement is about being able to keep as much of your hard-earned money as possible. And taxes are one of the biggest ways to derail one's retirement plan, for sure.
Absolutely. And here's another thing that will derail your retirement plan. We do not at Mosley Wealth Management just put together a retirement plan and charge people. If you're out there, you say, I'm looking for just somebody to put together a plan. And I know the charge is around $7,000, $8,000, and I'll just go do it myself. We don't do that. And I'll tell you why we don't do that. There are minor tax law changes every single year. There are tax law rulings every single week. And then there are major tax law changes through the year. So if you have somebody build you a plan and you want to do it yourself and you pay them $7,000 or $8,000, that's great. If Congress changes the rules in 2 months, your plan could be out the door. You could need an entirely different plan because it could change the rules completely. And so you've got to stay abreast. And that's why what we do is we work with people on an ongoing basis. We want long-term clients so that when you are out fishing or boating or climbing the mountains, I just had a client came in last week, Kristen, and he's going to take a 6-day trek across the Alps this summer.
Wow.
And he's in his 70s, and he's training for it, and he's in good shape. Whatever you're out doing, you don't need to be worried about Congress changing this little law or that little law that's going to throw your whole tax retirement plan off course and off rail. And that's what we do for our clients.
Well, and not only do you stay on top of it, but you are, again, as we're talking today, engaging in that strategic tax planning, looking ahead, planning for the future. And I know we talked about the strategy of Roth conversions. I'd love for you to share a little bit more on why this is such a time-sensitive and timely conversation right now, given where we are in our nation's history with the tax brackets and the current tax code.
Well, all of you out there might not feel this way, but taxes are on sale right now. There's a sale going on for the next 22 and a half months. And 22 and a half months until the end of 2025. There is a sale on taxes going on. Now, Congress could change the law. In fact, in the Wall Street Journal about 2 months ago, there was an article that said if they did change the law and they stay with taxes the way they are right now over a period of 10 years, it's a $6 trillion difference. It would be to our advantage if they continue taxes the way they are right now. Back in here's another one of those laws. In 2017, there was the Tax Cut and Jobs Act right after a presidential election, and we got a bill through Congress that cut all the taxes, and it lowered all the tax brackets. The 12 went down to a 10, the 15 went down to a 12, and if you were paying 25%, it went down to 22, and if you were paying 28%, it went down to 24. Now that's a good thing. Anytime you can save 2, 3, or 4% on your taxes, it's a good thing. And we're in that tax sale still until the end of 2025. You've got this year and next year to do something about it, and you can really get a sale. Now, I think Roth Conversions, that's where that comes in. You say, I've got all of this money that I think I was tricked into putting into a 401k or an IRA, and I've still got to pay tax on it. How can I pay as little as I possibly can pay in tax? Well, you want to catch a time when the taxes are on sale. And we know that taxes are on sale until January 1st of 2026. So, my question is your advisor talking to you about this? Is your advisor, I've heard so many people from the big box firms, Kristen, come in and they say, well, I talked to my advisor about Roth Conversions because I hear you talk about them from time to time on the radio show, but my advisor says he doesn't like to do Roth Conversions.
And we need to talk about why that is, because I hear that too, Tom, and you and I both know, why they say that. So let's shed some light on that conversation.
Well, I think it highlights the difference between somebody who's just being a broker and doing right things for you instead of being a fiduciary and doing what is the right thing for you. If you have $100,000 in an IRA, or let's make it bigger. If you have $1 million in an IRA and you do a Roth conversion and you decide that I'm going to take advantage of the 22% tax bracket before it goes back up to 25, and you say, well, I want to take advantage of that 3%, and so I want to convert, and I want to convert, let's say $100,000 of it, and you pay 22% tax and maybe 8% on federal, let's say 30%. Yours will be more specific, but I just want to ballpark it. You've gone with $100,000 and you've diminished it to $70,000. Well, a broker is thinking, oh my gosh, I was getting paid a fee on $100,000 and now I'm only getting paid a fee on $70,000. So some of the big box firms, in fact, the two biggest box firms out there have said, we just don't do Roth conversions for our clients. They can do them if they want to on their own, so they can possibly make a mistake, but they don't do the Roth conversions. You say, what's the difference? Well, that $100,000 that you've got is still to be taxed if you leave it there. And as it grows, it's more and more and more tax. It's forever taxed. And the $70,000 that you would have converted over to a Roth is never taxed again. And for those of you who are married, you leave that to your spouse. It's never taxed in your spouse's life. And the spouse leaves it to your children, and they have 10 years to take it out, but it's never taxed in your children's life. So $100,000 that's growing, that as much as it grows to, it will be taxed on forever, or $70,000 that's already been taxed that will grow tax-free and will pass tax-free. People see the value of the $70,000 that converting it over into a Roth. And that, again, Kristen, is what I talked about, and I call it a macro view of taxation in retirement. That's looking out the windshield, as opposed to a micro view, which is looking in the rearview mirror to say, I want to pay as little as I can pay in taxes this year. Maybe you should be thinking when the key time is like when you turn 59 and a half, and you can access that IRA or 401k without paying the 10% penalty, to get that converted over into a Roth. Then you're looking down the windshield of life and saying, I might have to pay a lot less taxes overall than if I pay the taxes now when I know the rates are on sale.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so that's the sweet spot, right? So for anyone who's listening, if you are 59 and a half, what would you say is the ideal age range? Or could people even look at doing some of this stuff earlier?
Great question. Okay. Let's talk about if you're before 59 and a half, you can still do Roth conversions.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you've got an IRA, you can still convert it. The only problem is, and a lot of brokers blow this when they do Roth conversions without really knowing about them. You've got to pay the tax from outside of the IRA, because if you pay the tax from inside the IRA, they're going to see that as a premature deduction and they're going to charge you a 10% penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the problem with if you do it before 59 and a half. I'll get back to the middle in just a minute. If you do it at 73, then you still have money in the IRA at 73. You've got to do what we talked about on the program last week.
Required minimum distributions. Yep.
And those cannot go in to a Roth. So the prime time to do it is when you're 59 and a half to 73. Better even still, if you've retired and say you're 62 or 63, you've got 10 years or more to do those Roth conversions once your income goes down. And my goal with all of our clients is to get you before you turn 73 and are required to take it out. Before you can just, thumbs up and laugh at the government because it's already out. It's already never taxed again. And you've beaten the government to the year of 73.
Tom, I'm excited to continue this conversation. We are just getting started, but as you always say, if you don't have your own tax plan, guess what? The government has one for you. We encourage you. This has never been a better time for you to be proactive and make sure that you have a strategic tax plan in place, and you can receive one as part of your complimentary personalized retirement blueprint. Again, this is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. It's simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how the team of Moseley Wealth Management can help and serve you. That number to call is 888-930-5609. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. Do you know how you'll generate income from your investments along with your Social Security in retirement? In our opinion, it's never too early to start the income planning process for your future. An income plan can help you work towards creating a steady stream of income to support you throughout your retirement years. Don't leave your financial future to chance. Take control today and start income planning for your retirement. Call the team at Moseley Wealth Management so we can help you design a complimentary written income plan to help you live the retirement you've always wanted. Call 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
With today's rising interest rate environment, have you considered refinancing your retirement? When interest rates go low, you might be able to refinance your homes, your car loans, and even your credit card rates because it could help you keep more of your own money each month. When interest rates go up, it may make sense to refinance your retirement. Higher interest rates could provide income opportunities that you may not be aware of. What works for your portfolio during low interest rate environments may not work for you in a high interest rate environment. So find out if a retirement refi could work better for you. Don't look down at today's higher interest rates. Find out if a retirement refi could work for you. Call Tom Moseley of Moseley Wealth Management at 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. With rising interest rates, it might be time for you to refi your retirement.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Moseley. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. We are having a very important conversation today about ways for you to engage in strategic tax planning. We've been spending a lot of time talking about Roth conversions. And Tom, I was really happy to hear you say in the last segment, we were kind of talking about different ages and stages. When is the most ideal time for someone to do a Roth conversion? I know that there's some other factors that play into this strategy that we need to talk about.
Well, there's a little mud in the water before 59 and a half and a little mud in the water after 73. You can still do them, and we still do them with our people, but it's not as advantageous. You are prime time for Roth conversions between 59 and a half and 73. Now, here's some things to consider. You say, I'm not sure I want to pay more tax. Well, let me tell you something. What you could do is just pay the Roth conversions within your tax brackets. Now, if you're married filing jointly, let's say you're in the 22% tax bracket. This year, that's $94,000 to $201,000. And if you're single, it's $47,000 to $100,525. Okay. So let's say you're in the 22% tax bracket. That's why it's important for you to know your tax bracket, your adjusted gross income. Now I'm going to get real specific here. Okay. So let's say you're married and you're making $120,000 adjusted gross income after you do your standard deduction. You're paying tax on $120,000, or if you're single and you're at $60,000 of annual income. Well, just think about it. You are in the 22% tax bracket in both cases. If you're married, and I'm going to switch just to married, you can cut all the numbers in half to get them, just so I'm not confusing. But if you're at 120,000, you've got $80,000 more dollars that's still in the 22% tax bracket. So what you could do is say, well, if I'm in the 22% tax bracket, I'll likely be in the 22% tax bracket all my life. And the buzzer has to go off. Remember that in 2026, you are no longer in the 22% tax bracket at 120,000. By law, in 2026, you will be in then the 25% tax bracket. Aha! You say out there, you say, hey, I want to pay 3% less tax. Then harvest out and pay tax on $75,000, $70,000 more dollars this year. And automatically, if let's say it's $70,000, you're paying $2,100 less dollars tax than you eventually will by harvesting that over into the Roth, just because the tax brackets are still low. So what a big reason. Know your tax bracket. Know where you fall within that tax bracket and take the rest of it.
Get your retirement right on the money with Tom Mosley. Call 888-930-5609 for your no-cost appointment. 888-930-5609.
A lot of our clients look at that and say, well, wait a minute. It's 22%, and then it bumps to 24% now if I'm married, and 24% goes all the way up this year to $383,000. Okay, now you're thinking, because you've got like $1 million in your, and you say, if I do $70,000 a year, I'll never get there. Right. But remember, the 22 goes to 25, the 24 now goes to 28. So a lot of our people who have 1 million in IRAs and 401ks, or 1.3 million, they're saying, you know what? I'm at 120,000. I've actually got 250,000, 260,000 more, and I still will stay in the 24% tax bracket. Let me go ahead and pay that tax now, because that's going to 28%, and you'll save 4%. Okay, you'll save $10,000 by doing it that way now versus if you wait till 2 years from now. So I know the numbers can get confusing, and that's why we like to sit down with everybody, bring your tax return, and we run it through a software, and it makes sure that if we do any kind of Roth conversions, that we're saving enough money in the Roth conversions that it doesn't negatively impact your Medicare Part B and Part D, your IRMAs, what it's called, if you know the term, or that it doesn't impact your capital gains. So you got to do this the right way. You can't just do it like a novice and think, well, I'm going to do this over here and it's not going to impact anything else. It might impact somebody else. And there's one more big thing. Kristen, I know you're married. I'm married. We're married filing jointly. Most people, a lot of people out there, half the people out there at least, are married filing jointly. That means your brackets, like I say, for the 24% tax bracket, go up to $383,000. And if you're out there and you're single, you say, well, mine don't. Mine only go up to $191,000. You're absolutely right. I don't have this last little trick available for you if you are single. But if you're married, here's something for you to consider. Everybody considers this idea of two becoming one. My baby girl is getting married on June 29th, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Tears, sadness, joy, because I do
Joy,
like the
yes.
young man, and
Good.
I mean, they're a great couple and everything, but they're two becoming one. We always think of the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're out there, you need to also think of two becoming one at the end of life,
Mm-hmm.
because many times only one is left for an average of 6.5 to 8 years. Okay.
Yep.
And the year that one passes away, you're still married filing jointly, but the following year, the surviving spouse, when two become one at the end of life, that surviving spouse is taxed on a single filing bracket. So therefore, this idea of, you say, well, I couldn't do 383. Absolutely. Your brackets get bigger faster. In fact, they get twice as big, twice as fast. You go into the 12% tax bracket, you go to the 22% tax bracket at $47,000 rather than $94,000. And when you're single, you go into the 24 at $100,000 rather than $200,000. And I'm rounding them off, but you understand what I'm saying? The faster you can get the IRAs and the 401ks over into the Roth before there's only one of you, then the one who survives has very little tax burden or no tax burden from the IRAs and the 401ks if they're all into the Roth. So another motivation for doing that.
For sure. And I'm sure as people are listening to this today, Tom, and I know I've had this thought, in my brain at different points as well, and folks that I've spoken with, a lot of times I hear people say, I wish I had used a Roth all along. What would you say to someone who's wrestling with that right now in light of this conversation we're having today?
Well, let's say you're sitting out there and you're in your 60s. 40 years ago in the 80s, there wasn't anything such thing as a Roth, as we said earlier. They only started in 1998. The law passed, and boy, it took forever to get people, you mean pay the tax now? And so many of you were out there and you were just thinking, I need to save. And I'm thinking, you were buying all the laws and the lies that were being sold about it. And you were being told, it's going to be better later. And now it's later and it ain't better, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So, and then also another thing came about. They passed on December 20th of 2019. That's just 5 years ago. Not even 5 years.
Not even hard to believe.
Right. They passed the Secure Act of 2019, 1.0. And what that did was it made you in an IRA or a 401k, when you can pass it to your spouse, or if you're single, you don't have a spouse, so you've got to pass it to your kids, and the surviving spouse has to pass that generally to your children.
Right.
Well, instead of them being able to take that out slowly over their lifetime based on their life expectancy, there was even a book by my friend 𝗪𝗪𝗁 that said, parlay your IRA into a family fortune. Because it could be a family fortune, because it could grow and they could have to take just a small bit of it out each year, and they could have that IRA forever. Okay. Well, Congress passed the law and said, nope, you got to take that out in 10 years.
Because they want their money. They want their share, right? Well,
they want it, and they need it.
Yeah.
They really need it. It's almost like they were $34 trillion in debt.
Right.
So what happens if you're out there and you say, well, I'm 65, my kids are in their 35 to 40, where they're entering their prime earning years, where they're earning probably more than they've ever earned before, I hope. And if you pass away in 10 years or 15 years and they're 55 or 50 and they're in those prime earning years, and you leave them, let's say, let's just use the round term of $1 million in that IRA because you had other sources and didn't need it. If you leave them $1 million, even if they spread that out over 10 years, they've got to take $100,000 a year extra out. And guess who pays the income tax? They do. And guess whose rate they pay it? Their rate.
Yep.
So leaving it to your kids went from being really advantageous to really disadvantageous to your children because you could drive them up in the brackets and drive them into a much higher tax bracket. And that blessing of the IRA could be not that much of a blessing.
Right.
So this is why, Kristen, and those of you who are out there and you're thinking about doing this, you need to check us out. What we do is we ask you to bring all of your stuff in so we can see all of your IRAs, all your 401ks, all your savings. We actually build a retirement blueprint, and the Roth conversion option is just part of it. We give you a Social Security analysis, an income analysis, a risk analysis. We put your portfolio through a risk analysis, a tax report, and the IRS conversion and the importance of that IRS conversion from a regular IRA to a Roth. You come in, you meet with us. People say, well, just send me that report. No way. That'd be like saying, doctor, I'm sick. Can you send me the analysis? The doctor's going to say, you got to come in. You got to let me look at you. You got to let me analyze you. We've got to do some tests. That's what we do to build your retirement blueprint.
And the best part is it costs you absolutely nothing. This is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. You today can call to receive a time to come in and meet with the team of Moseley Wealth Management and receive your very own personalized retirement blueprint. That number to call is 888-930-5609. More with Tom at Right on the Money after this.
Which will you spend more money on in retirement? Food or healthcare? Do you take your investments out of the stock market now that you are retired? How do you know if you've saved enough to stay retired? Will your Social Security check be reduced in the future? How do you produce income from your nest egg to fight costs like taxes and inflation? At Moseley Wealth Management, Tom Moseley and the team take the guessing out of retirement planning by devising a written plan that accounts for all of your concerns. The bigger question, are you going to be okay in retirement? Find out the answers to your retirement questions by calling Tom Moseley of Moseley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609. Income, investments, Social Security, Medicare, longevity, health care. We cover these solutions and all of those other questions on your mind to answer, are you going to be okay in retirement? Call Tom Moseley and Moseley Wealth Management for your own complimentary retirement review, 888-930-5609.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Moseley. He is the CEO and president of Moseley Wealth Management, and I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. Each week, Tom and I are committed to providing you with retirement planning solutions, and we do that through both the television show and this radio show. Well, we've had such a lively conversation today. We've been talking a lot about Roth conversions, about strategies to help lower your tax bill in retirement. Tom, I'd love for you to review the key steps and the takeaways that our listeners need to grab hold of as a result of today's episode.
Well, the key steps are these, okay? If you're going to do a Roth conversion and you're going to try to wing it on your own, I'm going to give you the formula, okay? We would love to sit down and work with you to do this so that you don't make a mistake. But the first thing you need to do is determine what your adjusted gross income. Now they've changed that, and they don't like to use the word gross because I think it was offensive. So they took it off the tax return, or they've finished it on the tax return, and now they call it total tax, okay, or total taxable income. Well, you find that out, and then you determine what tax bracket you're in. Therefore, you're going to have to look up the tax brackets. And then whatever's left in that tax bracket, you go ahead and pay that. You do a Roth conversion with your custodian. That's your big box firm or whatever. You do a Roth conversion for that amount, and you take it out, you pay the tax, and you don't take it out as a disbursement to you, but you do a specific Roth conversion over into a Roth account that you've got set up, and you've converted that. I'm tired just talking through all of that. Okay. And there again, that's one of the reasons that the big box brokerage firm people don't like to do it. It cuts into the golf game. It cuts into all kind of other things because it does take a little bit of time, but it's going to save you, as we've already shown you on here, a ton of money. And the numbers are astounding as to what you can save.
For sure. Absolutely. And, again, I think there just speaks to the fact that no two plans are alike for any person. This is why you have to come in. You have to have your own situation looked at, because even just the timing conversation of when's the best time for you to do it. As Tom shared earlier, are you single? Are you married? There's so many factors that you have to look at in order to get this strategy implemented and implemented correctly at the right time for yourself.
Exactly. I mean, I just did one. What's the impact of it? Well, let's talk about that, okay? I just did one this past Monday night in our Arcadia office with a client. And when I say did one, we harvest it. We don't, you say, well, if I take out 70 out of 1 million, or even if I take out 200 out of 1 million, it's going to take me several years. Right. That's why we use the term harvesting tax, because it's a Roth harvesting that we do. You don't do it all in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book out called The Gospel According to Roth. Don't go get it, because it says do it all in 1 year.
Wow.
And the rules that was based on, the laws that was based on have changed.
Mm-hmm.
But let me give you a comparison from this last Monday night, because I brought those numbers. The comparison was this client, now these numbers are going to be astounding to some of you. This client had $591,000 and some change in their IRAs at this point.
So these were all traditional IRAs, is that correct?
All 401ks, 403bs, and an IRA. They had 3 different kinds, but they mounted up to $591,000, and they were married filing jointly.
Okay.
Now, if they follow the government plan when they get to be 73,
Mm-hmm.
and my assumption is that one of them will live until the oldest one turns 90, so 17 years. This couple was 5 years apart, by the way.
Okay.
So one was 73 and the other one was 68. So that other one at 68 would only have to live to 85 to make these numbers work.
Okay.
But let's say 73 started taking their required minimum distribution at their tax bracket,
Mm-hmm.
and it was 22%, and they would pay that out over a period of time. They would pay the 22% on whatever was required from a minimum distribution for 17 years. But this couple had pensions. They did not need the required minimum distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, they put it into an after-tax account. Guess what? The government gets to tax not the basis of that anymore, but every time that grows, they get that little 1099. You get a 1099 that says your after-tax account grew. That's what you got on your bank account a few days ago, where that savings account grew $13 this whole year,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have to pay tax on the growth of that. And you have to do that for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you're dead and gone and your spouse has passed, then you leave that to your children. The balance, according to that calculation on $591,000, your children have to pay it out, and let's assume they're in a 22% tax bracket.
Mm-hmm.
They have to pay that out over 10 years.
Right.
Well, guess what? $591,000, hold on to your seats out there. According to that plan, which happens often,
Mm-hmm.
the government gets $719,000 in taxes.
God.
Now, you just do the math. They get $719,000 on $591,000 that's in your IRA.
I'm sure a lot of people are scratching their heads going, how is that even possible?
Because as the money grows, the growth is forever taxed and the money is forever taxed. That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
It's taxed forever in there, year after year after year. And we're assuming like a 5.5% to a 6% growth during this time period.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's rewind.
Okay.
Let's harvest that out over a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you harvest that out at 22%, if you harvest that out and at their tax bracket, I think their tax bracket maybe was 24%, the harvesting comes to $187,000 if you do it on your plan as opposed to the government's plan. Because
Wow.
remember, on the government's plan, you're going to have to take a little bit out every year.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to put that into an after-tax account that's going to get taxed every year. And then your kids are going to get taxed for 10 years. If you get it all harvested out into a Roth IRA at 22 or 24%, that's all the tax you have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And you never pay tax on that again. And so therefore, you could pay in that scenario $719,000 or $187,000 in tax. Now, if you think that sounds too good to be true, then you need to pick up the phone. I know we're a couple of minutes before we close, and I'll come back, but Kristen, give them the phone number just in case they think it's too good to be true.
Yes, that number to call is 888-930-5609. And just like Tom walked through this real life example, he can walk through what your real life example would be. If you are curious, what is the government's tax plan for you versus what is possible, and how could you harvest and pay less for your taxes? We encourage you. That number is 888-930-5609.
And what you'll get is this. You'll sit down. Don't call up and say, send me my tax report. We don't know your taxes. We don't know everything else you've got. We need you to come in and do a complete retirement analysis, and then we will give you in writing a retirement blueprint. You sit down with one of our advisors, and all of our meetings are complimentary, free. You need to claim yours by calling that number. You come in and you sit down with one of our advisors. We will do the income report, the risk analysis report, blah, 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 all of those other reports. We'll do a ton of reports, okay? But the most important one for you is we will do a tax analysis and give you a tax report to show you what you could harvest and have maybe $187,000 of tax macro view through the windshield versus doing it the government's plan, always looking in the rearview mirror, leaving a burden to your spouse, leaving a burden to your kids. Which way do you want to go? Your plan that's developed for you or the government's plan? Call the number if you want your own plan.
Tom, thank you so much. To our listeners, the good news is you don't have to settle for the plan that the government has for you. Tom and the team of Mosley Wealth Management would love to help and serve you, and all you need to do is pick up the phone and call. Again, this is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. That number to call is 888-930-5609, and you'll be able to schedule a time to come in, meet with one of the all-star advisors from Mosley Wealth Management to receive your very own tax report and begin developing your own tax plan that can best serve you. We appreciate you listening. Until next time, be safe, be happy, be blessed. We look forward to being back with you here at Right on the Money with Tom Mosley.
Tom Mosley and the team have helped thousands of folks like you in Southern California plan for their retirement. Now make the call yourself. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Investment advisory services offered by duly registered individuals through Mosley Wealth Management Incorporated. Mosley Wealth Management and Mosley Insurance and Financial Services are affiliated companies by common ownership license number OB61811. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refers to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength, claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This content is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the needs of an individual situation. All hypothetical examples are provided for illustrative purposes only. They do not represent real-life scenarios. Mosley Insurance and Financial Services, nor its agents or representatives, may give tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any investment decisions. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Some of the information provided may be from one or more third parties, which we believe to be reliable sources, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Mosley Insurance and Financial Services.